What is dependent relative revocation? Well, first of all, it's obviously a mouthful and it sounds like a complicated concept, but it's really not, even if the application of the concept can be somewhat complicated. If someone wants to amend a will, they prepare what's called a codicil, and the codicil will alter the prior will, but it will not revoke and entirely replace the prior will. But let's assume somebody executes a new will. Well, generally then the new will replace the old will, and it will essentially revoke the old will. Simple enough. But how about a scenario where somebody executes a new will and for some reason it turns out not to be valid? Either they don't it doesn't meet the technical requirements of a will for some reason, or possibly it's found that the new will was the product of undue influence, or that the testator did not have capacity to execute the new will. So for those reasons, any one of those reasons, the will be found invalid, the later will. So what happens then to any prior wills that were executed? Because technically the new will, the act of making the new will, would revoke the old will. But in that situation, would the testator really want to revoke all the prior wills, which would leave their estate subject to intestacy, where the state laws would determine who gets their assets rather than a will? Well, that's where the concept of dependent relative revocation comes into play. And it's a concept of equity that the courts create to say, well, we believe that in some situations the testator would not have wanted to completely invalidate the old will had they known that the new will that they were making was going to be found invalid for some reason. It's a way of essentially reviving the old will, so that becomes the effective will, rather than the court ruling that there is no will and that the assets pass through intestacy. The concept is not extremely difficult. Now, applying the concept can be more difficult because there are certain factual situations the court will look at. Did the new will, even if it was invalid, did it change the old will so much that it makes clear that the testator simply did not want to go by the old distribution scheme, that it was so different? Or was it relatively minor, whereas the testator possibly wanted to tune up the old will, but did not necessarily just want to create an entirely new scheme? And what was the timing of the new will compared to the old will? Was the old will physically destroyed? So applying the concept is not that easy, and that's why you should consult with an experienced probate litigator in reviewing that concept in the context of a will contest.